Grace's hands trembled as Jun pulled her closer, his breath warm against her cheek. The rain poured around them, soaking through their clothes, but neither moved. 7 years of silence hung between them like a wall about to shatter. "I can't do this anymore," Jun whispered, his fingers brushing her jaw. "Pretending you're just my sister. Pretending I don't think about you every single day." Grace's heart hammered against her ribs. "Jun, we can't." "Can't what? Can't feel what we feel?" "Grace, I've tried. God knows I've tried." His eyes searched hers desperately. "Tell me you don't feel it too. Tell me I'm alone in this, and I'll walk away right now." She couldn't. The words wouldn't come because they'd be lies, and she was so tired of lying. Instead, she reached up and touched his face, her thumb tracing his cheekbone, and that small gesture broke something in both of them. Jun closed the distance between them, his lips meeting hers with a hunger that had been building for years. The kiss was desperate, messy, perfect. Grace gripped his shirt, pulling him closer, tasting rain and salt and everything she'd been denying herself. But this moment didn't start here. It started much earlier, in a small apartment in Manila, where a young girl watched her mother pack their entire lives into 2 suitcases. If you're loving this story already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because you won't want to miss what happens next. And stick around until the end to find out if Grace and Jun's forbidden love survives. Grace was 10 years old when her mother Elena came home with news that would change everything. They were moving to South Korea. Elena had secured a position through an international healthcare worker program, a chance for a better life, better schools, better opportunities. Grace remembered the excitement mixed with fear as they boarded the plane, her mother's hand squeezing hers during takeoff. "We're going to be so happy, my love," Elena promised, her eyes bright with hope. "I'll work hard, you'll study hard, and we'll build something beautiful together." Seoul was overwhelming. The lights, the sounds, the language that tumbled too fast for Grace to catch. Elena worked at a rehabilitation center, long shifts that often stretched into the night, but she always came home with stories and small treats. They lived in a tiny apartment in Incheon, but Elena made it warm. She taught Grace Korean phrases while cooking dinner, helped with homework even when exhausted, and on Sundays, they explored the city together. 3 months. That's all they had. 3 months of building that beautiful life before a bus ran a red light on a rainy Tuesday evening, and Grace's world ended. The social services office was cold. Grace sat in a plastic chair, clutching the jade bracelet her mother had given her, unable to process the words the caseworker was saying. Orphan. Foster care. Temporary placement. None of it felt real. "Grace, I know this is difficult," Mrs. Choi, the caseworker, said gently. "But we've found a good family for you. The Lees in Haewon. It's a small town by the coast. They have experience with foster children." Grace didn't speak. She hadn't spoken since they told her about the accident. Haewon was nothing like Seoul. It was quieter, slower, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. The Lee house was traditional, with a small garden and a view of the sea from the upstairs windows. Mrs. Lee owned a bookshop in town, and Mr. Lee taught at the local high school. They were kind, patient, but Grace felt like a ghost in their home. Then there was Jun. He was 13, 3 years older than Grace, with serious eyes and a quiet way of moving through the world. Mrs. Lee explained that Jun had lost his parents in a fire when he was 8 and had been with them for 5 years. He understood loss in a way that most people didn't. That first dinner, Grace sat at the table unable to eat, her throat tight with unshed tears. Jun watched her for a moment, then without a word, slid his dessert across the table to her, a small red bean bun. He didn't say it was okay to be sad, didn't tell her things would get better. He just offered her something sweet and went back to his own meal. It was the first kind thing anyone had done that felt real. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Jun became Grace's translator, her guide, her shield against a world that felt too big and too cruel. He taught her Korean using comic books, sitting with her for hours in the bookshop after school, patiently correcting her pronunciation. When classmates asked intrusive questions about her mother, Jun would appear beside her, his presence alone enough to make them back off. They had a spot on the roof where they'd go late at night when sleep wouldn't come. June would bring blankets, and they'd lie side by side, looking at the stars, talking about their lost families. "Do you think they can see us?" Grace asked one night. She was 12 now, had been with the Lees for almost 2 years. "I hope so," June said quietly. "I hope my parents know I'm okay. That I found people who care about me." "Do you still miss them?" "Every day. But it's different now. Less sharp, more like an ache." He turned to look at her. "Does that make sense?" Grace nodded. "It's like they're always with you, but you can't touch them." "Yeah, exactly like that." Mrs. Lee watched them from the kitchen window sometimes, a soft smile on her face mixed with something else, something that looked almost like concern. Everything changed the summer Grace turned 16. June came home from university in Seoul for her school festival, and the moment she saw him getting off the bus, something in her chest twisted in a way it never had before. He'd grown taller, broader in the shoulders, but it was the way he looked at her that made her breath catch. Like she was someone he was seeing for the first time. The festival was loud and crowded, but June stayed by her side, winning her a stuffed cat at the ring toss, sharing shaved ice, laughing at her attempts to dance during the performance. When it ended, they walked down to the beach, their usual comfortable silence feeling different now, charged with something neither of them could name. Grace stumbled on the rocks, and June caught her, his hands gripping her waist to steady her. They froze, faces inches apart, and Grace felt the world tilt. June's eyes dropped to her lips, his grip tightening, and for a heartbeat, she thought he might kiss her. She wanted him to. The realization terrified her. June released her abruptly, stepping back like she'd burned him. "We should head home. It's getting late." They walked back in silence, but everything had shifted. That night, Grace lay in bed, her mind racing. When did my brother stop feeling like my brother? The thought made her sick with guilt and confusion. This was June, her protector, her best friend, her family. She couldn't feel this way about him. It was wrong, wasn't it? June left for Seoul 2 days earlier than planned, barely saying goodbye. Over the next year, the distance between them grew. He came home less frequently, and when he did, he was polite but remote. Grace threw herself into her studies, trying to ignore the ache in her chest every time she saw his empty room. The summer she turned 17, June came home for a week. The tension between them was suffocating. Grace caught him staring at her sometimes, his expression unreadable, and she knew he felt it too, this terrible, wonderful thing they couldn't acknowledge. It happened on a Thursday evening. Grace was in the garden, reading under the old cherry tree, when June appeared. Storm clouds gathered overhead, the air heavy with the promise of rain. "Grace, we need to talk." Her heart jumped into her throat. About what? June sat down beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "About why I can barely stand to be in the same room as you anymore." "June, let me finish. Please." He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. "I'm trying so hard to do the right thing. To be the person everyone expects me to be. Your brother, your protector. But Grace, his voice cracked. I can't look at you without wanting things I have no right to want." The first drops of rain began to fall. Grace's hands shook as she set her book aside. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm in love with you. I have been for 2 years, and it's killing me." June turned to face her fully, rain streaming down his face. "I know it's wrong. I know what people would say, what they'd think. But I need to tell you the truth because I can't keep pretending anymore. I need to tell you something." "Don't." Grace's voice broke. "Please don't say it." "Why not? Because you don't feel the same way? Because you actually see me as your brother?" June's eyes pleaded with hers. "Or because you're as scared as I am?" Thunder rumbled overhead. They were both soaked now, the rain pouring down in sheets. Grace stood abruptly, and June rose with her, following her toward the house. But she stopped halfway, spinning to face him. "I'm terrified," she admitted, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. "I'm terrified because you're right. Because when I think about my future, you're in it, but not as my brother. Because I dream about you and wake up feeling guilty. Because loving you feels like the most natural thing in the world and the most impossible thing at the same time. Jun closed the distance between them in 2 strides. Grace, what are we supposed to do? She whispered. They gave us a home, a family. How can we betray them like this? Is it betrayal to fall in love? It is when everyone sees us as siblings. Jun's hands came up to frame her face, his thumbs wiping away her tears though the rain immediately replaced them. I don't have an answer. I don't know how to make this okay. All I know is that I love you, and I think I always will, and if that makes me selfish or wrong, then I'm selfish and wrong. But I needed you to know. Grace's fingers curled into his wet shirt. They stood there, suspended in the moment, the weight of their confession hanging between them. Jun's gaze dropped to her lips, and Grace's breath hitched. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned in. Grace. Jun. Come inside before you catch a cold. Mrs. Lee's voice called from the house. They sprang apart like they'd been shocked. Jun's jaw clenched, his hands falling away from her face. I should go. Jun, wait. But he was already walking away, toward the house, his shoulders rigid with tension. Grace stood in the rain, her heart shattered into pieces, knowing that something between them had broken irreparably or maybe finally become what it was always meant to be. Jun left for Seoul the next morning. Grace watched from her bedroom window as he loaded his bag into a taxi, hoping he'd look up, hoping he wouldn't. He didn't. Make sure you're subscribed because the next part will break your heart before it heals it. Drop a comment telling me if you think Grace and Jun should be together. 2 months later, Grace received a letter. A government scholarship for nursing school in Busan. It was everything she'd worked for, her ticket to independence, to a future she could build herself. It was also 3 hours away from Haewon and even further from Seoul, from Jun, from the impossible situation they created. The goodbye was excruciating. The Lees threw her a small celebration, proud and teary-eyed. Jun came home for it, but he could barely look at her. When it was time to leave, everyone hugged her except Jun, who stood apart, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. Grace approached him, her bag already in Mr. Lee's car. You're not even going to say goodbye? Jun's throat worked as he swallowed hard. If I touch you, I won't let you go. Jun, will you forget me? The question came out raw, desperate. Grace's eyes filled with tears. I couldn't if I tried. Something flickered in his expression, pain and longing and resignation all at once. Good. That makes 2 of us. 7 years passed. Grace became a skilled nurse, working in a busy Busan hospital. She dated occasionally, tried to build a life that didn't revolve around a love she couldn't have. But every relationship ended the same way, with her comparing them to Jun and finding them wanting. Jun, she learned through occasional messages and Mrs. Lee's updates, had become a successful architect in Seoul. He was doing well. He never mentioned anyone special. When Mrs. Lee's 60th birthday invitation arrived, Grace almost didn't go. She knew Jun would be there, knew seeing him would tear open wounds she'd spent 7 years trying to heal. But Mrs. Lee had given her a home when she had nothing. She owed her this. Haewon hadn't changed. The bookshop still stood on the same corner, the house still smelled like Mrs. Lee's cooking, and Jun still took her breath away. He was standing in the living room when she arrived, talking to his father, but he turned at the sound of her voice and froze. 7 years collapsed in an instant. He looked good, mature, successful, but his eyes held the same longing she felt in her bones. Grace, he said, and just her name in his voice made her want to cry. You look well. So do you. The party was torture. They orbited each other carefully, making small talk with everyone else, hyper-aware of every moment their eyes met across the room. Grace escaped to the beach the next morning, needing space to breathe, to think. She found Jun already there, sitting on their old spot on the rocks. I should have known you'd come here, she said softly. Jun didn't turn around. I couldn't sleep. Some things never change. Grace sat beside him, close enough to touch but not touching. The sea stretched endlessly before them, gray and restless. They sat in silence for a long moment before Jun spoke. I stayed away because I thought it would make it easier. It didn't. Not even a little bit. I tried to fall in love with someone else, Grace confessed. I went on dates, let people get close. But I couldn't. Because they weren't you. Jun finally looked at her, and the raw emotion in his eyes nearly undid her. I never dated anyone seriously. How could I when I've been in love with you since you were 16 years old? Jun, what are we doing? We can't. Can't what? He turned to face her fully, taking her hands in his. Can't love each other? Grace, it's been 7 years. 7 years of trying to stop, trying to move on, trying to pretend. I'm done pretending. The only question is, are you? Grace's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. Everyone will think it's wrong. Your parents. My parents love us both. They want us to be happy. But we grew up as siblings. We're not blood. We never were. Grace, listen to me. Jun cupped her face, his thumbs stroking her cheeks. I don't care what anyone thinks anymore. I only care about you. About us. I'm 28 years old, and I've never loved anyone but you. I don't want to love anyone but you. So tell me right now, do you love me? Tears streamed down Grace's face. Yes. God, yes, I love you. I've always loved you. Jun kissed her then, and it was nothing like that almost kiss in the rain 7 years ago. This was sure and certain, a promise and a claim all at once. Grace kissed him back with 7 years of longing, her fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jun rested his forehead against hers. We tell them today, he said firmly. No more hiding. That evening, they sat Mr. and Mrs. Lee down. Grace's hands shook as Jun held one of them tightly. They explained everything, the years of suppressed feelings, the guilt, the love they could no longer deny. Grace waited for shock, for disappointment, for rejection. Instead, Mrs. Lee cried. I'm not disappointed, she said through tears. I'm heartbroken that you both suffered alone for so long. I suspected, hoped you'd find your way to each other when you were ready. Mr. Lee nodded slowly. You're not our blood children, but you are our children. And all we've ever wanted is for you to be happy. If you make each other happy, then that's enough for us. 6 months later, Grace stood at her mother's grave in Seoul, Jun beside her. She'd found her mother's cousin, connected with a family she thought she'd lost forever. She placed the jade bracelet on the gravestone. Mom, this is Jun, she whispered. He saved me when I thought I couldn't be saved. I hope you would have loved him too. Jun squeezed her hand. She would have. Because you do. On a spring evening in Haewon, Jun took Grace back to their beach. The sun set in brilliant oranges and pinks as he pulled out a small box. We found each other in the wreckage, he said, dropping to one knee. I don't want to lose you again. Marry me, Grace. She pulled him up and kissed him, tears of joy streaming down her face. Yes. Always yes. As they sat watching the sunset together, the Lee family joining them on the sand, Grace finally understood what her mother had meant. Home isn't where you're born. It's where someone sees your broken pieces and loves you anyway. And Jun had been loving her pieces back together all along. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe for more emotional true stories. And comment below telling me where you're watching from. I love hearing from viewers all around the world. See you in the next one.